So the title, you see, it's question. So actually, at the end of this presentation, you will see that that's a question we're still thinking on, and we need to work to answer this question. What is Alzheimer's disease? Probably everybody knows it, but just a brief description that it's a disease from the group of brain disorders that cause the loss of intellectual and social skills. And so that's degenerative disease when brain cells die, causing a decline in memory and mental function. What is important that scientists don't fully understand what causes Alzheimer's disease. So till now, it's not clear. And probably the most real situation, it's combination of various factors, genetic, lifestyle, and environmental factors that affect the brain. And what's happening in brain, it's like here, you see that in Alzheimer's disease, we see brain atrophy or shrinking of brain tissue. Why should we worry about Alzheimer's disease? First of all, that's our data on mortality rates in the US, and you see that it's growing. So that's the huge problem for the whole US. Another reason is that among all other, diseases common and not so common as HIV even, but Alzheimer's disease shows the worst trend. So percentage change among all US causes, you see it's positive and it's so high. Also, if we look at projections that have been made in the US, it's up to 14 million people will suffer with Alzheimer's disease. And Alzheimer's disease, it's a very sort of expensive disease because it requires, special care for the patients. How North Carolina looks compared with other states. So we see that it's half of the states with higher rates, age-adjusted death rates for Alzheimer's, and in average in North Carolina, it's around 30. But how inside North Carolina, what do we know about Alzheimer's? So on the left, it's just showed the scale, all the states, and here I listed the counties with more than 35 death rates. And we see that some counties, as Union, for example, yellow one, so has very, very high level of Alzheimer's deaths. How it looks on map. So see these red triangles. The largest one is for Union County. And even looking at the shape of this map, and the next maps I will show, it provides us with some thoughts about why that's happening in North Carolina. But till now, the reason for chronically high Alzheimer's mortality, because it's for many years was high in North Carolina, remains unclear. So that's distribution of arsenic in groundwater. We're not talking about college right here on this slide. And Union County, the highest Alzheimer's mortality rate, as a large part of Charlotte region, sits directly on top of slate belt, which naturally produces arsenic in groundwater. So that's the same map from Union County Community Health Assessment, and that's the map from Professor Avner Vengosh on this distribution of arsenic concentrations in groundwater in North Carolina, and that's a map of location of colleges, college ponds. And we see the red one, which have very similar geographic patterns with natural arsenic. They have the highest EPA hazard rate to pollute the area. Also, we have the third issue here in North Carolina. It's poultry production, and this map shows the spots of this production because arsenic-based drugs have been used in poultry production in North Carolina for many purposes. So that's just larger map of coal ash ponds in North Carolina. And that's the data we used in our analysis with locations of coal ash ponds and with gallon ash in billions, so amount of the gallons, and EPA hazard rates in our health data analysis. And we see that North Carolina, compared with other states, has very high, really high coal ash gallons and one of the highest EPA hazard sites in North Carolina, almost all of them. And so they are unregulated, they're located next to waterways and communities, and they produce leaking toxins into the ground. So that's information about coal ash plants in North Carolina. So that's hazard rates, as I mentioned before, and you saw these red rates. The highest one, 7 coal ashes have it. And also, we have additional consents. It's unlined impounds and poor condition of impoundments. So there is really problem not only with groundwater natural sources of arsenic, but also with coal ash. So why it's a problem? Because among the coal ash components, arsenic is one of important, and exposure to it can be associated with neurotoxicity, including Alzheimer's disease, and recent studies show that, yes, that's possible. Also, we have another suspicious, probably not so powerful like arsenic, but mercury, who also may cause hazards, health hazards for central nervous system. So that's in general health effects of coal ash, and it has been mostly shown in animal models and human cell lines. It could be directly or indirectly through the food chain contaminated human organism with, for example, arsenic, mercury and other contaminants. So that's our study. So we use mortality data, we use hospitalization data on coal ash ponds, which I showed before in the tables, and cofactors, demographic data, social economic characteristics, and smoking prevalence. And we analyze the difference in health outcomes, in this case Alzheimer's disease, in study counties around the coal ash ponds and counties without these coal ash ponds. So we had different scenarios, and that means that we took counties which had no even boundaries with this county, with coal ash ponds, as additional sensitivity analysis. And we adjusted by demographic, social, economic, and smoking factors. So what we found, first of all, mortality. It was higher in study group around the coal ash ponds, and as high as odds ratio from 1.25 till 1.55. It's 25–55% higher depending on the year we analyzed. Also, we saw associations with increasing amount of gallons of coal ash in these ponds. And for example, per each gigagallon, among the people older than 65, we can project to have more than 16% more deaths due to Alzheimer's disease. And also, mortality from Alzheimer's disease was higher with higher EPA hazard rating of this coal ash pond. So hospitalization admission also showed higher rates for hospital admissions, up to 143, and increasing with increasing amount of gallons in coal ash, up to 14 and more than 14% per gigagallon. So the main question right now, what we have, because you saw that coal ash ponds, it's the same area where we have natural arsenic, where we have also some chicken, poultry, huge production. So that at least 3 factors why North Carolina among the leaders on Alzheimer's disease in the United States. Because we saw more associations with number of ash, we can suggest that coal ash is one of cofactors. But even we can't rely completely on hazard ratio, EPA hazards, because the most dangerous coal ash ponds are on the same belt, you know, where we have the high natural arsenic. So that's really tight factors. Probably they're acting together. That causes, you know, pushing North Carolina to the leaders, in bad sense of this word, in the US in Alzheimer's. So first, we need to prove the finding on our correlations with Alzheimer's risk on larger data sets. Second step, it's at additional states how to do that. Additional states and analyzed cofactors and look at natural level of arsenic in the states and poultry production in the states, such as Alabama, Georgia, Kentucky. And in these states, check where the amount of gallons of coal ash correlates with Alzheimer's disease risk. And finally, use large Medicare US data for wide geographic analysis of Alzheimer's disease cases in North Carolina and potential cofactors. So that's actually what I was trying to do.
Thank you for this debate. So, in time, we have a question. John?
Yes, I've always heard about aluminum being related to Alzheimer's and being concentrated in the plaques in the brain of Alzheimer's patients. What can you say about that?
So actually, as I mentioned, there are multiple environment contaminants and multiple metals and dietary components which are now candidates as factors causing disease. That's happening when actually nobody knows what's the main cause. So that's why it could be also one of the factors. And as I mentioned in the SAID, for example, fourth analysis, if we'll take like larger US geography, if we'll look at different potential sources in different areas which could be associated with increased Alzheimer's risk, probably that will provide us some more information. Because of course, I just focused mostly on arsenic and sources here in North Carolina because it was more like related to the topic of this session. But definitely, it's far beyond like probably 30, 35, probably more potential factors which are now candidates. So step by step, we need to look at data sets, to geographic data, to this geographic distribution of as many cofactors as we can and look what can we find.
But you haven't specifically looked at aluminum.
Right now, we did not investigate even specifically arsenic. We just looked at general picture, whether we have problem here. Yes, we have. So the next steps will be in future. Yes, we can look also at these contaminants. Yeah, you're right. I agree with you.
Maybe just one comment. Aluminum is not highly soluble in water, so it's very highly to be found in water as a pathway for contamination. Something to add with the new study that we just published, we do see covariance of hexavalent chromium with arsenic, for example, and with vanadium in some other parts of drinking water in North Carolina. So probably it's not only arsenic, it could be a combination of several elements coexist. But next question.
I was just wondering if the data sets you used accounted for long-term exposure, just because Alzheimer's happens so late in life and just as a country we move around so much. So how do you kind of account for where people are? And I also just was wondering why Alzheimer's generally, why did that grab your attention with respect to the health effects of coal ash?
So actually, we used data analysis from 2008 to 2013, so been around the data on coal ash, number of coal ash gallons for coal ash. So we just looked at health data around the years, around this data set. And we just looked through the very long list of diseases. We scrolled through the whole infection, so everything, because it was first type of analysis about the coal ash ponds. And Alzheimer's disease just popped out, with highest rates and very stable, and it's really attracted our attention. At this time, as to me, for example, I didn't think about something like arsenic, geological characteristics. I just analyzed coal ash. When it's popped up, so I started analyzing other possible factors, and I see, yeah, it's probably something here. So it wasn't like specially like idea, let's go and look at Alzheimer's. It was wide screening of multiple diseases.
Hi, you brought up the question about the geographies that are used here, and using a county that's rather large, as well as most of these coal ash ponds are very close to county borders. So is it possible to do this analysis on a smaller geography?
Mm-hmm. So that's very nice question. That's actually what we're doing right now, because in North Carolina, on zip code level analysis or census tract, we have health data, but unfortunately it's not enough statistical power, so we did this analysis. It shows the same tendency, yeah, but it's not enough statistical power to demonstrate. So that's why I said we need large data here, and we're planning to add additional states with large gallons in ash in the ponds, and then we can move to the lower level of statistical analysis because we'll have more states, more data.